Penn State 45, Minnesota 17. That's Sean Fitz, Nate Bauer. I'm Greg Pickle from Blue White Illustrated. Sean, I'll start with you. This was a game Penn State needed to win and win convincingly, and despite a slow start for the offense, it did exactly that.
Well, you also need to mention the governor's victory bell, which
who could forget?
We all remembered existed before tonight. That's coming back to State College, so everybody's happy for that. Right. This is a one that you could see the season diverging, and Penn State sort of recaptured everything that they had going for them in the first half of the season. Of course, you put Michigan in the rear view. Minnesota, you're not going to get many points nationally for beating Minnesota, but this is a game they really needed badly.
Right.
They came back, they responded, started a little bit slow, but came back, responded. Sean Clifford, 4 touchdowns. Parker Washington, I thought, was phenomenal. They found the tight ends. How many times have we talked about the tight ends? So a lot of things that they could have easily let get away, they came back around and really got the convincing win in the Big Ten, which there's not a ton of those going around.
Yeah, as James Franklin said, they're going to enjoy this win for a little bit, but it'll be then on to Ohio State. Nate, what came out of this game from your perspective that makes you feel better about where things are? Not to necessarily felt worse, but feel better about where things are compared to this time last week.
Yeah, I think that the tough thing to contextualize is Minnesota was so one-dimensional, and that will carry over to other teams that Penn State faces through the rest of the season. The issue for Penn State is that
not this next one, though.
Not Saturday, right? And so you see it. This is Penn State's DNA, the bend but don't break thing, and being able to rebound and recover and eventually within the same possession get an offense into third and long situations. They feast on it. They did it tonight, just like they've done all year. They weren't able to do that against Michigan, and that's the difference. That is the prime difference. Is Michigan was in 3rd and 1 and ate that up all afternoon. Tonight it was a completely different story. Their quarterback just, you kind of felt bad for the kid. Like it was a no-win situation because you're testing him against the secondary of Penn State that is pretty good to begin with, and he wasn't equipped for that. Right. So no, I think defensively it's a great sign for Penn State moving through the rest of the season. It's just, does it really apply against an Ohio State team that they're going to face next week?
Yeah, Sean, I'll let you answer that question, but I think the ultimate key is that it's easy to not peek around into other gaps, and it's easy to feel your responsibility when you know the other team is almost not ever going to beat you with the pass, even though they did a couple times today.
I mean, you look at the defense last week and this week, it's completely different. The defense played on skates last week, just back on their heels, waiting for Michigan to do whatever. You didn't have to do that against Minnesota just because they were so one-dimensional. Tanner Morgan, of course, not playing, and the backup, like Nate said, you give him credit for coming out here, but he's not going to be a guy that beats you. But what you like to see is the adjustments that they made. I mean, Penn State rolled 4 linebackers out at time. They played Curtis Jacobs at the field backer position. He had 14 tackles. He was incredible tonight against Minnesota. So there's a lot of adjustments on both sides of the ball. We mentioned the tight ends. We mentioned throwing to the backs and things like that. So there was a bit of an evolution there in terms of how does Penn State take what they saw last week, obviously awful performance against Michigan, and not let it get away from them, and they did a pretty good job with that. But as Nate mentioned, as you mentioned, Ohio State's waiting around the corner. You can't go 3 and out on your first 2 drives against Ohio State and expect not to be down 10-0, 14-0. So Penn State's got to fix. They've got more fixes to do. This is a team that bounced back and did a nice job. You take that for what it's worth, and you roll forward and see what you can do next weekend.
Nate, final thoughts?
This is a flawed Penn State team. We know this. This is no mystery here. This is 7 games in. You've seen that, but I do think that it speaks. Look, nobody's talking right now about James Franklin's record after the first loss of the season, right? Because they were able to handle their business. There was some adversity along the way. Obviously, Minnesota being able to score to bounce back and have that touchdown at the end of the first half. Like, you just being honest, you don't know sometimes with this Penn State program at the state that it's at. This is a much larger conversation for another time, right. But it's just that little sense of uncertainty given the way that they played for the previous month. So to be able to get this in the books, have a whiteout win, fans are happy, you move past it. It sets up for what I think, people are going to disagree with me, but I think is going to be a very interesting game next week.
Penn State 45, Minnesota 17. For Nate Bauer and Sean Fitz, I'm Greg Pickle. We'll have plenty of coverage at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com as Penn State gets ready to take on Ohio State next Saturday at noon here at Beaver Stadium.